Shalom. Welcome to this week's parasha. The parasha this week is called Miketz, which means at the end. At the end. It also signifies the last days, the end of days, the end of time. And this parasha will explain about Joseph, and also he's a shadow of the Messiah. And it talks about the end of when Messiah will come, when Messiah will be lifted up, when Messiah will return and reconcile with his brothers. So this parasha is very interesting. And Joseph is a shadow of the Messiah, both his first and second coming. For example, Joseph's brothers in the previous parasha sold him as a slave into Egypt. They wanted to kill him. He came to his brothers and he told his brothers his dreams. The brothers did not believe that he would be this great ruler. The brothers didn't believe him. The same way with Yeshua. Yeshua came to his own and his own did not receive him. He revealed himself to his fellow Jews in the time, the leaders, and they said, if you don't believe that I am he, you will die in your sin. They say, who are you? He said, I am he. I am the Son of God. And they didn't believe him. So they wanted to kill him. And they delivered him into the hands of the Gentiles. The same way Joseph's brothers delivered him into the hands of the Gentiles, the Ishmaelites. They delivered them into the hands of the Midianites and the Ishmaelites. So we can see the same thing here, where the Jewish leaders delivered Messiah into the hands of the Gentiles to be killed. Okay, to be killed. Now, after the parasha begins in Genesis 41:1, after 2 years, Pharaoh dreamed that he was standing by the Nile, and behold, there came out of the Nile 7 cows, attractive and plump, and they fed in the reed grass. And then the story went on. There were 7 other cows that came out that was very thin, and they ate the fat cows. And then he had another dream, and he saw 7 ears of corn, nice ears of corn, and healthy ears of corn. And there were 7 thin ears also, and the thin ears ate the 7 fat ears. So this dream Pharaoh had, and Pharaoh called all of his wise men to interpret that dream. None of the wise men could have interpreted the dream until Pharaoh got angry, and Pharaoh wanted them dead. And this is when the butler remembered Joseph and decided, oh, my sins have come before me. Oh, king, there is a Hebrew in the prison of the king, my lord, and he interpreted this dream for us. Oh, and Joseph was taken out from prison and brought before Pharaoh. And eventually Pharaoh made him ruler, the second in his kingdom. He sat next to Pharaoh. Basically, you could say the right hand of Pharaoh. The same way with Messiah. Messiah was in the grave. After he came from the grave, he was elevated straight to the right hand of God. That when he was resurrected, Miriam came and was going to touch him. He said, don't touch me, for I have not yet ascended unto my Father which is in heaven. And that's amazing. He tell them, go and tell the disciples, I ascend unto my Father, unto your Father, and unto my God, and unto your God. And Yeshua went up on the right hand of the Father. And we know he came back down, spent 40 days with the disciples, and then returned back up into the heavens from the Mount of Olives. And that is fascinating to see that Joseph paralleled the Messiah. And it was a future, his life was a future of exactly what would happen to the Messiah when he came. He was rejected by his brothers, and he was delivered to be killed. But it was God's providence that Joseph would not die. So Reuben decided he was going to take Joseph and bring him back to the father. But that wasn't the will of God. God wanted Joseph to go down into Egypt for him to be ruler, so the brothers can bow down to him. And that's fascinating. Judah decided, let's sell Joseph. Let us sell him. And when he decided to sell him, that's how he got down to Egypt as a slave. But when Joseph spent 12 years in prison, 12 years, and 12 years in prison. And those 12 years, he was being tried, he was being proven, he was being prepared and groomed for his rulership, for all the trials of Joseph. All his suffering was to groom him for him to be a great leader in Egypt. And In this parasha, in this portion, Joseph is the Messiah. He represents the Messiah. Pharaoh, the greatest king of the land, represents God on his throne. Yeshua, after he ascended to heaven, he sat on the right hand of God, just like when Joseph ascended from the prison, from the grave, Yeshua. So the prison is the grave. Joseph's prison is Yeshua's grave. He ascended from prison, elevated from the low estate as a slave, elevated to the right hand of the Father. This is a beautiful parasha. Benjamin is represented in this parasha as the messianic believers who were not with the 10 brothers. Benjamin were not with the 10 brothers to sell Joseph, neither to kill him. And Benjamin came from the same mother, same womb as Joseph. Just like the messianic believers, they were not with the mob and the leaders of Israel who convinced the common people to crucify Yeshua, crucify him. Let's deliver him into the hands of the Gentiles. Benjamin went out with the brothers. Neither were the messianic believers with the Jews at the time. The Jewish messianic believers, they were not with them at the time. And they believed that Yeshua was the Messiah. They were born of the same water, born of the same spirit. They went through the new birth, the born again experience. They had the same birth, just like Yeshua was baptized by John, and also lots of the disciples even baptized by John and also baptized by Yeshua. So we can see they had the same birth, the same mother, Rachel. It's a beautiful parallel. Egypt is represented by the world. The world, Egypt represents the world. And Yeshua came down into this world, and he suffered and went through his trial, just like Joseph went down into Egypt and suffered. And imagine the whole world had to come for corn in Egypt when Joseph was elevated to be ruler. The same way the whole world will have to come to Yeshua and bow down to him, bow the knee, because Yeshua will be Lord. Amen. Yeshua will reign as king, just like how Joseph reigned as king. The 7 years of famine. The 7 years of famine. Imagine the 7 years of famine. That's like the 2,000 years of exile, where the children of Israel were without help without food. The time of Jacob's trouble, the 2,000 years when after Messiah died, 33 AD, for 2,000 years, Jacob was the children of Israel, and Jacob was mourning. The children of Israel went into exile, away from the homeland. All this is parallels. Yeshua was 30 years old when he started his ministry. Joseph was 30 years when he began to reign in Egypt. Joseph was sold for 20 pieces of silver. Yeshua was sold for 30 pieces of silver by his brethren. Judah led the brothers. And the same way today, the rabbis, Judaism, they're the ones representing the people of Israel, just like how Judah was representing the brothers. Jacob, he is the patriarch. He's the fathers. And Jacob was literally dying while grieving for his son Joseph. He was in a dying state. It is said that when Jacob found out that Joseph was alive, Jacob revived. You know that will happen. In the next parasha, you will see when Jacob recognized that Joseph is alive, he came alive. The same way the resurrection will occur when Judah reconciled with the Messiah, when Israel reconciled with the Messiah. The resurrection, the fathers will resurrect, the fathers will revive, all the dead will rise. David will rise from the dead. So Jacob represents the patriarchs and the prophets whose dead are waiting for their resurrection to be revived. So the reconciliation of the brothers with Joseph and his brothers is so important, and the role of Benjamin is so important. We can see that the Messiah, for 2,000 years, there was the time of Jacob's trouble. The Messiah was unknown to his people. Joseph was unknown to his people. The same way the brothers and Jacob did not know and couldn't recognize who Joseph was. When the brothers went down to Egypt, they couldn't recognize who Joseph was. The same way today, for 2,000 years, the Jewish people, a lot of the rabbis, a lot of the leaders does not recognize who Yeshua is. They cannot see who the Messiah is. Though he's in front of them, they cannot recognize him. There's like a blindness upon them where they cannot see who the Messiah is. Messiah Yeshua, who came 2,000 years ago, they still don't believe he's the Messiah. Just like how the brothers didn't believe that Joseph was they're going to bow down to Joseph, and that Joseph would be this great leader, and they rejected him. And today, the same rejection today towards the Messiah is a parallel. We can see for that 2,000 years, Joseph was hidden. He was hidden. They couldn't recognize him in Egypt. The same way in Christianity, is Christ Messiah is hidden in Christianity. They said, oh, this Jew that came 2,000 years ago, and they changed the face of the Messiah. It's time to unveil the Messiah. That's why it's so important to unveil who the Messiah is and show that he's a Hebrew, so that he kept Torah. He taught Torah, and he never break Torah, because if he had ever broken the Torah, he could never be the Messiah. Joseph was Sadiq. Messiah Yeshua is Sadiq, righteous. He couldn't break Torah. Joseph was sold into Egypt when he was 17 years old as a teenager. And he spent 13 years in Egypt. 1 year he served Potiphar, and he feared God. He refused to be enticed by Potiphar's wife for him to sleep with her. He said, how can I do such a thing against God and against my master and against God? And no matter how much Potiphar's wife tried, he feared God. And that was a tremendous blessing for him, because Joseph, is like the Messiah. He represents the Messiah. He is a shadow or a type of the Messiah. And Isaiah 11 says the Messiah, the root of Jesse, the branch, the offspring of David, this ruler, he said he shall be consumed with the fear of God. And Joseph was just like that. So for 2,000 years, the Jews cannot see who the Messiah is. So this is an amazing process right now. When Joseph had to reconcile with his brothers, Joseph refused to make himself known until he tested his brothers. The test was very important. When Joseph tested his brothers, when he called the brothers to have a meal at his house, in his palace, he furnished Benjamin with 5 times more of the food. 5 times more. The brothers didn't show any jealousy. He was testing them to see if they would be jealous of Benjamin as they were jealous of him, why they sold him into slavery. And Joseph saw the heart of his brothers. They were changed. A heart of stone was removed. Their heart was changed. They had a heart of flesh. And that's the new covenant, where you would put the heart of flesh. He said we'll give them a new heart and a new spirit. He would pour the Ruach HaKodesh upon them. And you can see when Joseph tried the brothers, how the brothers repented, how they confessed their sins through their trials, and how they was so grieved. The last test was when Joseph put the cup in Benjamin's bag, and to see what the brothers will do. Joseph had to test the brothers to see if they still had hatred towards him. He used Benjamin to represent himself, because Benjamin was of the same mother, the beloved of the father. So he had to test to see if the brothers have this heart of stone, if the heart change. The servant of Joseph went and said, how can you take my cup, my divining cup? Where is it? And the brother said, in whosever sack the cup is found, let him die, and we also will be your servant. And they opened all the bags, and they found the cup in Benjamin's sack. But the brothers tore their clothes and they repented, and they said, no, my brother, no. They couldn't accept it. They refused to go back home without Benjamin. They all went back to Joseph to plead for Benjamin. And in pleading for Benjamin, they said, we all will be your servant. We cannot allow you to have this young man. we will be your servant. And they showed that love and that penitence that they needed to show. Before Joseph could reveal himself, he needed to prove his brothers to see if they were ready, if their heart was ready. And he used Benjamin. The same way for Messiah to reveal himself, he have to prove Israel. Israel have to be proven. In Matthew 23, 37 to 29, Yeshua said to the Jewish people and to the leaders, O Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets, and stonest them which are sent unto thee. How often would I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathereth her chicks under her wings, and you would not? Behold, your house is left unto you desolate. For I say unto you, you will not see me henceforth, till you shall say, Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. So they will not see the Messiah. He will not reveal himself until they say, Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. Zechariah 12 verse 10 says, they shall look unto him whom they pierce. And Zechariah 12 also said that they shall mourn for him as one mourneth for his only son. So they have to repent. They have to call on the Messiah for the Messiah to reveal himself. And that's exactly what Joseph was doing with his brothers. He was testing them to see how much they accepted Benjamin, who was representing him. And the Jewish people, if they accept Messiah, they will accept the Messianic believers, because they themselves will be Messianic believers, because they now accept the Messiah just like how the Messianic believers accept Messiah. So Benjamin is the Messianic believers. Judah represents Israel, the nation of Israel. Joseph represents the Messiah. Jacob represents the patriarchs that will resurrect when the reconciliation of the brothers come together. Jacob will resurrect from the dead. He will revive. And all the patriarchs will resurrect. All the righteous will resurrect when Israel reconciles with Benjamin and Joseph. This is an amazing parasha, and it really, envelopes and it parallels the entire first and second coming of the Messiah, the life of Joseph. The stone had to be rejected by the builders. The brothers had to reject Joseph for Joseph to get into Egypt to rule the whole world, for the whole world to be nourished and fed by Joseph. The same way Messiah had to be rejected by his people, for him to die, resurrect, and ascend to God on his throne, and for him to come the second time in the reconciliation of the brothers to rule the world, that the whole world will be nourished by Messiah, Yeshua, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. I hope this parasha has meaning to you and great merit, because this is exactly how the entire Bible, the entire prophecies, the Psalms, this is exactly how this has been fulfilled. The blindness, the stones that the builders rejected became the cornerstone. Joseph was rejected by his brothers, but he was the ruler, and he was the one that they had to bow down to. The word of God said every knee must bow to the Messiah. He we have exalted with the Philippians 2. He said every knee must bow, every tongue must confess that he is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Pharaoh was the greatest ruler of the land, representing the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, representing God. So God was represented by Pharaoh in Egypt, Joseph represented by Messiah, and it's just a beautiful picture of the coming of the Messiah and the reconciliation of the brethren. God bless you. Shalom.